Hello, this is part 2 of our series on common sentence errors, and this video is going to cover run-on sentences. Again, much of the material in this presentation comes from the Hawkes Learning Foundations of English textbook and supplemental instruction material. In a previous video, we have already talked about sentence fragments. Just to review, sentence fragments are incomplete sentences. They are sentences that do not include enough information to be a complete sentence. Fused sentence and comma splices are the opposite. They are two kinds of run-on sentences. Run-on sentences occur when we have more than one sentence that is run together incorrectly, and we're going to take a look at some examples of these. First, to begin thinking about run-on sentences, it is useful to review what a simple sentence is. Just like we discussed in our video on sentence fragments, a simple sentence is also called an independent clause. And an independent clause is always made up of a subject, a verb, or a verb phrase. We remember that a subject is a noun, a person, place, thing, or idea that is performing an action in a sentence. And a verb is an action in a sentence. The word predicate refers to the verb and all the other information that comes with the verb that explains how the verb is being done, to whom the verb is being done, where the verb is being done, etc. So on the screen, we have two examples of simple sentences. We have the class studies writing. In this example, class is our subject. It is a noun and is performing the action of studying in this sentence. Studies writing is our predicate. Studies is, of course, the verb. In the second example, the students write discussion posts every week. Students is your subject. It is the noun that is performing the action in that sentence. In this case, the action is writing. So students is your subject, write is your verb, and write discussion posts every week is your predicate. So sometimes when we are writing, we accidentally combine two simple sentences together in an improper way, and that is called a run-on. You can almost think about it as like a car accident or a train crash, two things that are run together without a buffer being there. So in the first example, we have the class studies writing, the students write discussion posts every week. We have two simple sentences there, as we talked about in the previous slide, but there's no punctuation between the two of them. Therefore, there is nothing to buffer the crash. In the second example, we have the same sentence. This time there is a comma following the first independent clause or simple sentence, and that is also incorrect. These are two different kinds of run-on sentences. The first one is what's called a fused sentence. The second one is what's called a comma splice. Let's take a look at another example. Air pollution poses risks to all humans. It can be deadly for asthma sufferers. In this case, we also have two simple sentences or two independent clauses. The first independent clause begins with the subject, air pollution. Then what does air pollution do? It poses. Poses is the verb. And then poses risks to all humans is your predicate or your verb phrase. Then we have a whole nother subject and verb situation on our hands. It is our subject, can be is your verb phrase, and can be deadly is your predicate. Notice that there is nothing between those two sentences to buffer them in the run-on. So this is an example of what is called a fused sentence. Below, we have the same sentence written, so we still have sentence number 1 here, followed by sentence number 2. This time there is a comma in the middle, still a run-on sentence. In this case, it's called a comma splice. The reason for that is that the comma is not a strong enough form of punctuation to connect those two sentences together in the proper way. So now that we've learned how to identify run-on sentences, we need to figure out how to correct them. And there are a number of ways to correct a run-on sentence. The first way is that you can turn a run-on sentence into a compound sentence, and you can do that by adding a coordinating conjunction and a comma. Remember that your coordinating conjunctions are your fanboys words. They stand for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. And so an example of this would be, air pollution causes risks to all humans, comma, but it can be deadly to asthma sufferers. We have now correctly joined those two sentences together to create a compound sentence. Another way of creating a compound sentence is to add a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb. If you remember from previous videos, we talk about conjunctive adverbs, words like therefore, thus, however, moreover, furthermore, as being our sort of fancy conjunctions or our more sophisticated conjunctions. Excuse me. So an example of a corrected compound sentence, a corrected run-on sentence as a compound would be air pollution causes risks to all humans, semicolon, therefore it can be deadly to asthma sufferers. Now the punctuation here is really important. If you did not have the semicolon here, this would still be a run-on sentence. So it's important that when we're using conjunctive adverbs, we have the semicolon, the word, the comma, and when we're using our fanboys words, that we have the comma. So one way to fix a run-on is to turn it into a compound sentence. Another way that you can do this is by just adding a semicolon between the two simple sentences. And this can be done if the relationship between the two independent clauses or two simple sentences is very clear. So for instance, air pollution causes risks to all humans, semicolon, it can be deadly to asthma sufferers. While this sentence is grammatically correct, it's probably not the best use of a semicolon. You can think about the semicolon as being like a junior period, right? In the sort of scope of strength, you have the period is the strongest. It means pause for the longest time. The semicolon is pause for the second longest time, and the comma is the shortest pause or the weakest pause out of the three of them. A better use of a semicolon would be the second sentence here. I stayed up late, semicolon, I am tired. The relationship between those two sentences is much clearer. We have an obvious cause and effect logic on our hands. Therefore, that's a more appropriate use of a semicolon to correct a run-on sentence. Another thing that you can do is you can just separate the two sentences, forget a compound sentence altogether, and let's make this into two completely different separate sentences. And we can do that by placing a period in between the two independent clauses. Air pollution causes risks to all humans, full stop, period. It can be deadly to asthma sufferers. A final way that we can fix a run-on sentence is that we can rewrite it as a complex sentence. And what that means is that instead of joining two independent clauses in the middle, we're going to create a dependent clause and attach it to an independent clause. So, although air pollution causes risks to all humans, comma, it can be deadly to asthma sufferers. This time we put the conjunction at the middle. Remember that although is a subordinating conjunction, and whenever we have a subordinating conjunction on our hands, what we are talking about is a dependent clause. And we can connect a dependent clause to an independent clause with just a comma. The reason for this, again, is because the linking word or the conjunction appears at the beginning of the sentence. We do want to be careful, however, to not make this mistake. Sometimes when we're trying to combine sentences, we get really worried and we put too many conjunctions in the sentence because we want to make sure we have not written a run-on. This would be an incorrect revision of this sentence, however. Although air pollution causes risks to all humans, comma, but it can be deadly to asthma sufferers. The reason why that's incorrect is because we have two conjunctions. We have both a subordinating conjunction, although, and a coordinating conjunction, but. You only need one or the other. One or the other will correct that run-on sentence. So let's review just a couple more examples. These come from your Hawkes Learning Foundations of English textbook. Some examples of fused sentence. The magician dropped into the tank of freezing water, and the audience gasped in surprise. And the librarian raised her eyebrows when I returned the book. It was overdue. Now these are two different fused sentences, but fused sentences nonetheless. In example number one, we have our fanboys word, or we have our coordinating conjunction between the two simple sentences or independent clauses. But what is missing there is a comma. So without the comma, your Hawkes homework will still consider this as a fused sentence. So be sure to put the comma after water. In the second example, we have no coordinating conjunction, no anything. So we have to be able to figure out where it is that we separate one sentence from the next. And what we want to do is find where the second subject is introduced. So we have librarian as our subject, raised as our verb, raised her eyebrows when I returned the book, and then new sentence, it is your subject, was is your verb. So we need to separate these two sentences here, and there's a number of ways we can do that. The way that we're choosing to do it is with a semicolon in this example. Okay. Take a look at two examples of a comma splice. Remember, a comma splice is a run-on sentence that the independent clauses are separated by just a comma. My roommate baked cookies last night, comma, we ate all of them by the next day. And I knew it was going to rain today, comma, I forgot my umbrella. We can correct those sentences by, in the first case, replacing that comma with a semicolon. And in the second case, adding a comma, keeping the comma but adding the word but. So those are two examples of how to correct comma splices. You may want to review this video or go back and watch the video on sentence fragments before you begin your Hawkes Learning homework. That's it for now.